Hey, what's up everyone? Tedrick85 here, and today I'm going to be beginning my 2014 FIFA World Cup vlog. And as far as this day, there's only one game to talk about, and that is between Brazil and Croatia. I gotta be honest, the first 20 to 25 minutes of this game was fantastic. Croatia started off really fast. Brazil was kinda nervous and tentative at first, but they grew into the game. But this game changed in around the 25th minute or so, and that's when the bad officiating started. And I do have to say bad officiating is what really tainted this game for me. And I'll tell you why here, give you some examples here in a few moments. But talk about the first goal. The game was actually scored by Croatia. Well, technically it was scored by Brazil, Marcelo's own goal, which was set up from an Ivica Orlic cross to Nikita Jelavic, which he could have done better by himself, but having Marcelo's heel go hit the ball into the goal was quite fortunate. But like I was talking about a second ago, everything changed with the officiating, and the name of the referee in this game is Yuichi Nishimura, Yuichi Nishimura, which will be a name that will live in infamy in World Cup history, surely, because his performance was shambolic. First example was around the 25th minute or so, when Neymar was booked for a yellow card on his elbow to Luka Modric's head, which I wish I could show you the replay of it, but here, you could say that Modric embellished a little bit after the impact, but if you look real closely, Neymar looked in the direction of Luka Modric, so people can't say, well, Neymar didn't see him, which would be full of crap because he clearly glanced over at Modric before he raised his hand up, so one could argue that it was a red card. I don't know. I thought at the moment the yellow card was fair just simply because of Modric's embellishment towards the end. But the second half was when the officiating really started getting bad, and most notably when it came to the penalty, which to me wasn't even a penalty at all. It was a dive by Fred. And mind you, Fred isn't really a small player either. He's a pretty big player. But yeah, he took a soft fall from Lovren of Croatia. And then Nishimura pointed to the spot, and immediately I'm like, what? That was not a penalty at all. And I try to think of it from the referee standpoint. Well, maybe he didn't see it. But that's why you have linesmen and stuff to confer with the referee before he makes these kind of calls. So I call BS on that. That should have not been a penalty. So the penalty resulted in Neymar scoring a second goal of the game, which he scored in the 29th minute, shortly after he escaped with simply a yellow card on Modric, which made it 2-1. And another example of Nishimura's shoddy officiating was whenever Orlic's goal in around the 86th minute or so got waved off because of a goal line foul on Julio Cesar, which I have to take issue with too, because if you watch any of the major European leagues, 10 times out of 10 that would have been considered a goal, but for some reason they thought it was too much contact in the goalie and that, which if you see the review, which I wish I could show these, but I'm not allowed to, but if you ever look at a replay, there wasn't really any more contact than what you'd see like any of the major leagues, so that should have been a goal. It should have been 2-2 Croatia at the time. Which got me thinking, they can wave that goal off because of an Orlic foul on Julio Cesar, but yet they somehow managed to miss Bernard pulling on the back of Rakic's jersey right before Oscar made it a 3-1 game. So it's just that inconsistency that I have a real problem with. And you could say, well, there's a bunch of bad games in any soccer game. But yeah, I do understand that, but when there's a bunch of bad calls and it's benefiting the same team, and this is what really scares me. I hope this is not an indication of what this tournament is going to be like, especially a tournament game that has Brazil in it, because I really don't want those questions being provoked. I don't want anybody coming up with conspiracies like, oh, this tournament is rigged for Brazil, why don't they just give them the freaking trophy and that? And no, I don't want that. It's not fair to the players, it's not fair to the fans, and more importantly, it's not fair to the country of Brazil, because I really don't. It's gonna be a real shame if their image ends up being tarnished because somehow this has ended up being rigged, which is not an impossibility, because you can ask any fan of Italian soccer that match fixing scandals are indeed real. You can ask any Juventus fan and they'll tell you all about that, but yeah, it's just gonna be a real shame, and again, I don't want to feel that way, but yeah, I just really wish, I hope this is not a trend. I hope the officiating gets way better than this, because, and I'll tell you what, Yuichi Nishimura probably will not be featured in any more games. Well, hopefully he won't feature any more games. Not only in this tournament, but any kind of major tournament, because his performance was just god-awful. And as a fan, which, I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't care who won this game, but as a neutral, seeing that, there's no excuse for it. You know, when you host a tournament as big as the World Cup, you want the officiating to be top-notch, you want everything to go by smoothly. And it just wasn't up to par. And then people can say all they want, well, you can't blame the refs in that. Well, that's kind of like playing a video game and you lose a life due to a glitch, and yet you get them telling you, oh, you don't blame the AI. It just, I don't know, it's, like I said before, I just hope this isn't a trend. But, and it wasn't the officiating that was bad. Another thing that was bad about this game, too, was the goalkeeping. In particular, Croatia's Stipe Pleticosa. Other than a save that he made in midway through the first half against Oscar, all three of those goals he could have saved, but yet he didn't. No matter what the circumstances were, those were savable goals. Goals that could have been prevented, but he would have been in better position to do so. Pleticosa just looked kind of slow out there, and I just don't think he was quite up to the task with most of the pressure that Brazil was able to get on him. And on the other end, Julio Cesar wasn't really all that much convincing, especially in the second half when Croatia was trying to get that equalizer when it was still 2-1. He looked very shaky. I know there was a good long-range shot by Luka Modric, which it was quite a way out there. It was a decent shot, but any other goalkeeper, any quality goalkeeper would have made us put it in his hands, but somehow Julio Cesar bumbled it in that. That's definitely a question mark that Brazil has hanging over their heads in that. But as far as the best players in the game, Neymar may grab the headlines for getting 2 goals in the game, but in my honest opinion, Oscar was awesome in that game. I mean, he did everything right for Brazil. And even though I personally don't like Chelsea, the football club in England, I think Oscar is a really good player, and I'm really happy to see someone like him getting an opportunity to shine, because I think he really did a good job for the Selección and that, but which not really taking anything from Neymar, because he was good too, despite what people think of him, but I thought Oscar was the man of the match. And Croatia had some pretty good players out there too. You know, Luka Modric is the first name that comes to my head. And Ivica Olic, I was really impressed seeing him out on the wing. He created a bunch of opportunities, though he was a bit on the slow side, and that he didn't quite keep in pace with the rest of the action in that. But I thought he created opportunities. He did the best in what position he was in, and I think he made the most of his opportunity. Though I do have to give an honorable mention to Vedran Chorluka for him handling some of the corners and set pieces that Brazil had, because he always seemed to be right there when they're trying to stop them. But yeah, it was an interesting first day of action, and I know it's going to leave Niko Kovac something to think about according to the next game. Which, it's interesting because after the match and that, he wasn't real happy, to say the least, and in particular the referee. And he was actually on record, and I quote, "That's how we start the World Cup. We better give it up now and go home. If you continue like this, you will have 100 penalties. I think 2.5 billion people watching on TV saw this was not a penalty. This was ridiculous, and if we continue in this way, we will have a circus." And then to add to the disagreement, he was added, "We talk about respect. That was not respect. Croatia didn't get any. If that's a penalty, we don't need to play football anymore. Let's play basketball instead. It's a shame." And it really is a shame, because, like I said, the first part of the game was fantastic, but I just don't know what happened. But there's a bunch of inconsistencies with officiating, a lot of calls being made that shouldn't have been made, a lot of calls that weren't called that probably should have been, and I really don't blame him for being frustrated. It's really hard for me to look at this objective knowing what happened, but you have to feel sorry about this and wondering if it's just bad luck in the hands of the Croatians or if it's just something more sinister behind this tournament. But like I said before, I just hope those questions aren't going to be aroused much longer and that FIFA really puts their feet down and really come cracking down and making sure everything's up to par, and that's including the officiating. But oh well, let's see what happens tomorrow. Nat, I know there's 3 games on the docket, including Mexico and Cameroon in this group, and an all Group B in that. So let's keep our fingers crossed that there's no incidences similar to today's game that happens on tomorrow. So. And that's pretty much it that I wanted to say as far as this day is concerned. So I appreciate you listening to this, and thank you for watching this, and I'll see you again tomorrow when I talk about Day 2 of World Cup action.